The last person to discuss is Maria. Maria, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself.
Councillor Maria Ring for Thorpe Cathedral's ward.
So we've got a few procedural items on the agenda first, and then we'll get into the main business. So in terms of apologies, I've had apologies from Councillor Lucas Green and apologies for lateness from Councillor Paul Fleming.
I haven't had any other ones.
Good. I haven't had any items of urgent business, but I did want to update the committee briefly on the joint health overview and scrutiny meeting. So as members will be aware, the CCG came to us and asked if we'd be willing to participate in a joint health overview and scrutiny with 5 other boroughs in the southeast of London. All the chairs and scrutiny officers of the committees met yesterday, and it has been decided that I'm going to chair this joint committee for South East London. We are yet to figure out what the timings are or what exactly will be covered on the agendas, but I'll make sure that this committee is kept aware. And as far as I know, anything that's specific to Southwark will still come to us rather than going to the joint committee.
In regards to membership, have they agreed? Will it be 2 members for each?
It's 2 members from each, yeah.
So do we know who the other one
So it's Mr. Bill.
Right.
But there is a bit of fluidity in if people aren't around because of it. But it stays from proportionality within each council. So I think it's been decided by the whips.
Yeah, no.
So that was the only thing that I had kind of urgently. Does anyone have any interests or dispensations they need to declare?
No.
No. And can we approve the minutes of the last meeting, which are in the first agenda this evening?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to do this meeting in 2 halves. So the first half we've got 4 seasons in HC1, and we're going to do it in our traditional format of having them come up and us do normal questioning, and then we'll take a short break, and then I know most of you are here for our round table, and what we'll do is mix us all up with all of you round our almost round table, and have a much more informal discussion about kind of the terms of the inquiry that we've got, and I know the questions that we've put to you all before this meeting. So if we can first have the representatives from 4 seasons and HC1, and if you just want to sit this side, it's probably easiest. Thank you. Wherever you like. No, wherever you want there is fine. So it'd be great if you can introduce yourselves to the camera, and I don't know if either organisation has kind of brief comments or opening statements. So we've invited you to come along because we're carrying out an inquiry into care in our communities, and we know that you both support care homes in the borough, and we wanted just to be able to talk to you a bit about what you're doing currently, what you'll be doing in the future.
Okay.
So I don't know which one of you wants to start.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
I'm Mike O'Reilly. I'm the Risk Management Director for 4 Seasons Healthcare. I'm happy to introduce the company, but
go for it,
just do introductions first.
Yeah.
I'm Liz White, Managing Director with HC1.
I'm John Ransford. I'm a Director of HC1 and a retired Local Government Officer.
Okay, Mike, do you want to go first?
Yes. So 4 Seasons Healthcare is the largest care home provider in the UK. The overall company works in 3 separate divisions. 4 Seasons Healthcare is that part of the business that deals principally with state-funded residents, either local authority funded or continuing healthcare. The second division is Brighter Kind. Brighter Kind deals mainly with private pay residents, and they offer a lifestyle package. And the third group is the Hunter Coombe Group, which deals with specialist care. That includes secure hospitals and, from the social care side, learning disability homes. So I work principally with 4 Seasons Healthcare, which is the largest of those 3 divisions, and we have 350 care homes, although I have a role with the other 2 divisions as well. The business is run by Chief Executive Tim Hammond. There is a Chief Operating Officer. There are 8 Managing Directors throughout the UK, and we're now in the South East Managing Directors region. As you will be aware from press and others, all care home groups are suffering difficulties, and that's particularly so in the case of homes that are operated and specialise in state-funded residents. And Four Seasons and I guess HC1 fall into that category. We run one care home in the borough, Burgess Park, which is in Picton Street in Camberwell. It is currently in special measures. The last 3 inspections, I'll just run through those very briefly. We had one approximately a year ago on the 12th of November 2014. That reported in February 15, and all the standards that were investigated and inspected were met on that occasion. Shortly after the report was published, we were called to a meeting with Southwark, and the CQC were asked to go and re-look at the home, and they did so. They identified 2 inadequates out of the 5 areas, and I understand that you had a talk from the CQC on the last occasion, so you're aware of the rating system. So 2 inadequates, 3 requires improvements. We were then inspected again in August, 3 months ago, July, about 3 months ago, and reported in August. And again, there were 2 inadequates and 3 required improvements. And the report did identify a number of areas where there was improvements, but it appeared to be the view of the CQC that because the progress was not rapid enough, the scores were effectively retained as they were previously. We're currently embargoed. I don't know if you know what that means.
Yeah.
That effectively we're not taking any residents on. We have 56 beds, and there is an occupancy at the moment of 26, which is just over 45%.
Okay.
So we have a variance against our budget of 30 beds.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's anything else. No?
Okay.
So I'll pass over to you, Liv. That would be
HC1,
HC1, can I
Thank
start on
you.
HC1 and just make a couple of general points,
Yeah.
and Liz will do the detail. HC1 is a large national provider of residential care too. It rose out of the ashes of Southern Cross, which may mean something to some of you, which is the major provider which collapsed about 5 years ago. HC1 manages a large part of that portfolio. We believe to higher standards, and Liz will talk about the residential care business, and particularly in Southwark. We're also very strongly pushing solutions to what we see as a major social care issue in this country that needs big solutions. And if you want to talk about some of that later, I appreciate you'll be mainly interested in this part of the agenda of what's going on in this borough. I'm happy to, because I think it's very relevant to some of the issues elsewhere on your agenda.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Liz.
Okay. Well, we currently operate 207 homes, 10,500 residents. I'm the managing director responsible for 50 of those homes, and I'm the nominated individual for CQC for HC1 as well. Quality of residence and quality of life is very important to us. Wherever we are delivering that, we take that very seriously. It's not a situation we want to be in, and we want to be providing the right care. There are a number of challenges, as John alluded to, that face our industry, funding being one of them, shortage of nurses being another one. We operate the other 2 nursing homes in the borough. We operate Tower Bridge, which is one of our largest homes, 122 beds, and Camberwell Green, which is 55 beds. Tower Bridge is currently embargoed. It's got an inadequate rating with CQC. We're awaiting their return for inspection, and we're very confident that we've put a lot of resource into the home and that we'll be in a position to do that. Camberwell Green, sadly we had to make the very sad decision to announce the closure of Camberwell Green. Camberwell Green is a 55-bedded home. It's operated over 3 floors. The building does not lend itself to providing the best care for residents. 2 of the floors don't have any living spaces, which means that residents don't have the opportunity to have open living spaces on the floor of which they live. We've also suffered with leadership and attracted nurses into the home, which has meant that the standards haven't always been delivered in that home that we would want. We did come and meet with Southwark in July 2014 and put a proposal at that time to the council that we were finding it incredibly difficult to operate the home given the current fee levels, that it was impossible to deliver the care that we wanted and staff the home satisfactory. At that stage, the council were very keen that we didn't close the home and that we continued to operate the home. We gave it a really a good shot. We appointed a new manager, we recruited staff into the home, and we took new placements into the home. The difficulties have continued with recruiting staff. There's a feeling everybody wants more staff in the building because of the layout of the building, and we had to make the decision that it was no longer viable to provide that service, that no matter what we did, we weren't going to be able to provide a viable service. So sadly we made that decision, working very closely with the local authority to find people safe homes at the moment. And I have to say, having attended the meetings with all the relatives in the home, without fail, the relatives were very complimentary about the care that their relatives were getting in the home as well. I'm very sad that we were having to make that tough decision.
Perfect, thank you very much. I've got one question to start with, and I'll open out to everyone else. Liz, it's a question for you. In terms of the residents in Camberwell Green, I know that you've made a commitment that you won't close the home until everyone has been rehomed elsewhere. Where are we at with that?
Currently we've got 35 residents left in the home.
Yeah.
There are roughly 20 residents who wish to remain within the borough. Remaining within the borough because of the limited nursing provision is reliant on us looking at either Burgess or Tower Bridge being able to accommodate those residents. And for the residents that are moving out of borough, we're working very closely with social workers and colleagues to find placements for those residents.
And do we have any idea how long that process might take and when we can expect that those residents will all be?
I would be hoping that we would be able to do this safely before Christmas.
Okay.
But obviously that's dependent on placements. It really is because there are so few nursing placements around.
Okay, that's great. David?
Thank you. Can I follow up on that question? So in relation, particularly to Camberwell Green and the closure, when you say that you have a commitment, obviously, to keep the home open until everyone has found a new home, I mean, how are you proposing to do that with the current embargo on Tower Bridge and Burgess Park? And when you say, I mean, to what extent are people being pressurised to move out of the home by Christmas, or are they actually really being allowed to stay as long as they feel they need to find a suitable home?
I think when you embark on a home closure, there is a balance. It has to be managed safely, and when people start to move, we need to work together to get an end date, and we're working very closely with the council to do that, because what we don't want to do is have one or two residents left on each of the floors in the home. It wouldn't be good for the residents, it wouldn't be good for the staff, and it wouldn't be safe. So there has to be a process that we manage safely through that. I think the plan that I have putting together with the local authority, obviously communicating with CQC as well, is that we've put additional resources into Tower Bridge to make sure that that home is stable. As an operator, I would feel safer if the residents from Camberwell wish to remain in the borough, to transfer them safely and manage this situation under one roof. The staff from Camberwell Green wish to remain with the company. So if residents do move to Tower Bridge, the staff would also want to move with the residents to Tower Bridge. Clearly, we have to work with everybody else. I think the local authority are working with us to support the homes. And the choice is the choice of people living in Camberwell. If they want to go to Tower Bridge, that's their choice. Once we can take admissions, and if they want to go elsewhere, that's also their choice. So there's been a lot of meetings with individual relatives and family members to make sure that the choice is theirs where they want to go.
I mean, are you confident, though, that we're not going to hear stories from the relatives of residents in there, or the residents themselves, that they've been pressurised into moving into Tower Bridge? Because, I mean, it sounds a very ambitious target, Christmas, to me. I mean, we only had the announcement, in the last couple of months, I think, about Camberwell Green closing, so I would have expected a longer period than 3 or 4 months to move everybody out.
I guess in the back of that as well, if you're waiting for Tower Bridge to be re-inspected, when are you expecting that embargo to then be lifted to be able to do that?
We're at the hands of CQC for that to happen. We have given CQC our latest action plan. I'm constantly, daily in touch with the home and doing a weekly review of our progress in the home. if we aren't able to take placements, clearly we'll have to keep Camberwell Green open for a longer period. I believe for the residents in that home it'll be better for them to move sooner rather than later. But we're working, every week we have a call with the local authority where we really are working in partnership. The decision to place people is not our decision. The decision is made by the local team and social workers, and they all have advocates allocated to them. So that's not HC1's decision. That's a decision that's being made by the individuals.
But just going back on my question, are you confident that people will support the process that you're going through and the timescales that you're working to? Because, as I say, it seems ambitious to me.
It perhaps is ambitious because I want to make sure that it's done safely. I'm the nominated individual. I'm a responsible person. I need to manage both sites safely, and I need to keep staff team in post during a home closure. There is a balance there with that, so if you ask me, my view would be if I can do this before Christmas, it would be safer and better for the residents. If we can't, then I'll have to review that and address that and make sure that we maintain the service at Camberwell Green. The residents that are moving out of Borough, that started to happen already, where there's a place for people, because I think once people know that a move is imminent, people often want to get on and do that. So relatives have gone out and found placements, and they've started that safe transfer of residents out.
Maria? Thank you. It's for you the question as well. Good evening. I understand that from the 20 people, residents, that they were left in the home, 10 have already been moved out outside the borough. The other 10 are remaining now inside of the home. If you move all those 10 directly, also some of the questions that you have answered to my colleague is fine, but I don't think that if you transfer 10 into Tower Bridge, if you are lifted the embargo, it's too many people immediately after you have gone through a process of rehabilitation, I should say, and you are moving 10 people in there, it's going to set you back to square one.
Well, I think that's why my proposal is we have a protection plan in place, that there would be additional resources, additional managers, and the staff team at Camberwell would move with the residents. This is an option that we're offering to people because there are no other placements in the borough for residents to go to, and we can't operate Camberwell Green any longer. So we've offered this option that's there for people who wish to remain in the borough. If people don't wish to take that option, then clearly that is the decision of individuals to make. But if they do, if we do get into that position, then I have a very robust protection plan in place that says that I have additional management that will be in the home and that the staff team will transfer across. And so it would be the same as operating the two homes, but operating with the same teams under one roof rather than under two roofs.
But what have you done inside of Tower Bridge at the moment to get it back into normal? That means
I've got additional resources in there. We've done a huge amount of recruitment. I have a very robust action plan that we're working on at the moment. CQC have returned and they found that we have made improvements. We still had some issues with medications, but we've made improvements on the two areas that we needed to with the warning notices. We expect them to return any time. They need to return within the 6 months. As I say, I have produced an action plan that I shared with them last week. I'll be sharing that with them again this week when I'm sure that we've made the progress that we need to have done.
The only concern that I have is that because you already closed Camberwell Green, with all the resources, the financial resources, I promise that you are having, what guarantee do we have that you are not also going in, say, 6 months to a year time, close also Tower Bridge?
Well, the decision is to close Camberwell Green. You've already heard that the staff team want to remain with the company, and for most of them, the best option for them would be to transfer to Tower Bridge, because that's where some of the residents are going, and that's a local resource in the borough, and it's a home we want to invest in. And part of the decision making to close Camberwell Green, which in many ways is not fit for purpose, and the local authority agreed with that, is to invest in proper standards of care and quality standards of care at Tower Bridge. And that is our plan. Now, you ask for a guarantee. Given the state of social care in this country at the moment, anyone giving you a guarantee about the survival of sufficient care. We're actually seeing a reduction in the amount of care provided, residential care provided, when the demand is going up. So in that sense, you can't have a guarantee. But as far as our company is concerned, we want to make sure the standards at Tower Bridge are of sufficient quality for these people and the people who live there and future residents to have a good home in the future. And that's what we're working towards.
Very much also. Just one more question to Burgess Park. Again, you have had a lot of problems, but there are forever been articles in the press, one recently in The Guardian, where it says that you are likely to close a lot of homes around the country from all the houses, 20,000 beds that you have, that you are likely to close one by one because you are having enormous pressure financially.
Sorry, I don't think that's what the articles are saying, that we're closing the homes. I think what it's saying is that we might be disposing of them to other providers, but obviously there will be individual homes that will need to be closed because they're not viable at the moment, and for all the reasons that you've just heard, with the fee levels, with the difficulties recruiting nurses, with the difficulties recruiting other staff, with the increased regulatory costs and so on, many homes that were previously viable are not now viable. So there will be homes that will close, yes.
And what about Burgess Park?
Well, I can't give any guarantees for exactly the same reasons that we've just talked about, that this home will remain viable going forward. As I've already said, it's under embargo, it's got 26 residents in at the moment. It is making a loss, as you can probably imagine. And so every option needs to remain on the table. It would be foolhardy for us to give any long-term commitments when we're under this sort of difficult pressure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jasmine?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike, Liz and John. I get from you the context. John, you've already explained the national context, which we're aware of. I mean, it's not a great situation to be in. But I suppose, we're lucky that we're not looking at the national context. We're just, for this purposes, we're looking at our constituents, which are the people of Southwark and in those two homes. So I just wanted to get underneath some of the things that you were saying, really, because, we're still having to operate in this situation, which isn't the best situation. There's a lot of flux. And obviously, when you're providing residential care, you need to have stability and consistency. So I just want to get an idea of, you've already given an indication that morale of the staff isn't rock bottom because they still want to stay with the company. But then the economic climate, that could mean anything. So I just want to have an indication of how you're working with the staff, because that in itself, is quite a thing, isn't it, to manage staff in those two sites when the inspection, is hitting you from all sides. The relationship between the staff and the families, and the quality of services, to the people in both the homes, really, because, obviously I'm representing constituents, so I need to know, that things are all right, really. And from any of the questions, from anything that you said, I don't really get a flavour of what is really going on. So if you could...
Well, if Liz describes that process in detail for you to give you reassurance, can I just say a word about what you said about your constituents, the national situation? Of course, but national situations are made up of individuals and neighbourhoods and communities and local authorities. And social care is local authority responsibility. It's our responsibility to do something about this together.
Yeah, and we're committed to doing
And your
that.
documents talk about partnership, and so are we, which is why we want to commit, to this long-term service. But as you say, it's difficult, and sometimes difficult decisions have to be made like this in order to get better outcomes. But I'll ask Liz to explain the process in detail as you've asked.
I think probably talking about care to begin with, because care is of the utmost importance to us. We're passionate about care and getting it right, and we know that in each of our services, to be able to do that, we need to have the right leader, and we need to support that leader, and we need to support that leader through incredibly difficult times, because as you say, when you are non-compliant with CQC and you have issues with local authority, that puts in an enormous amount of pressure on a service. It's also difficult to attract people to come and work in a service, especially when you've got the press putting it all over the front page. You know, we've got to attract people to come into these services to improve them. And you also need some time to be able to bed that down and put that right. So we have to spend a huge amount of time working with the staff, supporting with the staff, training them, showing them a different way of working and recruiting new staff into the services. So I'm very fortunate that I had a big team working with me, and I have HR people who are working with us to support the home that's closing, to make sure that we look after the staff as well as the residents, hence the fact that staff want to stay with us, that we treat everybody fairly, that we make sure that the number one is to avoid redundancies for us, so if we can offer them opportunities within the company, we will do. Number two, if they don't wish to remain with us, is to help them find other employment. And number three is to make sure that they stay with us, so that I can safely manage the process of closure. So there's all sorts of different things that I need to do that, because if we lose the staff now at Camberwell, that service is at high risk, which is why when we talk about closure, yes, we want to work with everybody, and it's a really, really carefully managed process, and that's why I'm working so closely with the local authority, because we all want to make sure that we do this right, and that everybody is safely discharged from the service, and that it's a good discharge. And so it's very important that we work in partnership, and we are working very, very closely together. We've also got volunteers who are helping us. We work with volunteers. The volunteers are going to be helping us help people find new homes, helping them settle in and talking with them as well. So we've got a lot of community involvement in the process as well, because it is as important for me to make sure that everybody at Camberwell finds a new home as it is for everybody that we're looking after now as well. So we've taken this process very, very seriously. Moving people to Tower Bridge is a risk, as you've identified. I don't want to be in a position that I'm providing a higher risk. I want to make sure that that is a safe service and that we manage that correctly, if that's the best solution for everybody involved. And delivering a high standard of care is what we're about. You know, we're not a company who wants to be delivering poor care. And when it happens, we take it very seriously. We do a deep dive into it. We say, what is the fundamental problem that's gone wrong here? What can I do to make sure that this isn't happening again in 6 months' time? That what we're doing here is going to sustain the quality for the people that are living in our services. And that will mean for us as a company a high intense resource into the services for the next 6 months to a year, until we're sure that they're working well and that they can sustain the improvements that we've made. And we, not just waiting for CQC to return, we have regular visits by the local authority and by the CCG into the home to make sure that that progress is being made.
And your relationship between the people and the families, you know?
The families, I personally did all of the meetings with the families. And spoke to all of the families individually and did meetings with the families as well. I've also met with the families at Tower Bridge to apologise for the shortfalls that we had and to make sure that they know the actions that we're taking. So I've had a lot of involvement with families in both of the sites as well. Feedback from families has been understanding. They've been upset, but the meetings were calm. They understood the reasons, and as I said, they were very complimentary about the care and the care staff that we're doing at Camberwell.
Mike, I don't know if you want to say anything about that in terms of Burgess Park and maybe kind of the relationship. Given that you've got an under occupancy, are there concerns there from people who are in there? Are there concerns that it's under embargo and that, you know, given everything else that's going on, there is a potential that they might also have to move? I don't know if you want to comment kind of generally on that.
Well, I don't think we're quite at that point yet, but I think if you go into Burgess Park, and I invite anyone who wishes to visit to join me and do so, it's not the depressing home that you might think reading the press and looking at the ratings. It's actually quite a pleasant and sort of place where people are genuinely sort of joyful from time to time. It's obviously a very difficult situation that people find themselves when they're in a care home. But one of the things that really makes that work is that we have a very committed staff team. And again, we do, like every other care provider, have high turnover of staff relative to national averages for other sectors. But that's often the staff go to other care homes, and so that they're not leaving the sector. So, but we do have a reasonably stable staff team, relatively speaking. We have a committed staff team, and I'm sure that the care that's being delivered there is currently safe. We're now, I think it's 4 months since the last inspection, and we would welcome anyone to come and see for themselves. In order to gauge that, we have a number of new quality assurance systems in place. Every single one of our residents, I think by now, will have been through that process. So we're looking at their care from a longitudinal perspective. So everything from their induction through every stage, every risk assessment, every consultation with them. We've got a very person-centred approach. We're looking at their choices and preferences. So we very much make it feel for them like it is their home, rather than a service that we're delivering to them. So we work very closely with them. In terms of residents' feedback, we have a new system for that. We encourage relatives to provide feedback, visiting professionals to provide feedback. And so we think we've got as good a system as we can for understanding exactly what people are feeling. And the results that we're getting are very positive and very uplifting. And I think this is a home that can thrive in the future. But
Bill was first,
Um,
David, and then Ray.
I'm not that impressed with anything that's been said so far, I have to say. It's just platitudes, to be perfectly frank. I kind of want to drill down with both of you, both companies, resources. You would be committing business suicide if you walked through those doors and didn't come out with the stuff you've just come out with. We're going to increase resources, we're going to do this, that and the other. I want to know how. And I want you to concentrate on the areas around continuous professional development of your staff teams. You admitted earlier on in your opening remarks that you didn't have a good staff team, you had poor management. Why did you have that for a start? What are you doing around continuous professional development? How are you reviewing the training that people are getting? What is the training they're getting? What are the exams they're taking? What are the levels? And then how is that reviewed on a 6-monthly and an annual basis within their appraisal systems? I'd like to hear more about that to give me confidence. Anyone?
Okay, well, I think if you talk about resource, I think for every care home, a registered manager and a leader in that care home is the most important area, and the recruitment and attraction of managers to a service is something that as a company we've worked very hard on, and we have an experienced manager in Tower Bridge. We sadly lost the manager in Tower Bridge around March, April time.
What's the qualification levels of your managers?
And
what are they qualified in?
Registered nurses. They're registered nurses, and they have registered manager award, so that's
Right.
they've got a registration in management. We also recognise that leadership is a key skill as well. We provide leadership training for managers and for home staff as well. You know, at different levels, we've increased the leadership training for shift training. We have to provide mandatory training for staff, and that's obviously regulated. So your fire, your safer handling training, health and safety, infection control, nutrition, and we have many more training packages for staff. We use e-learning. We've got a bespoke training package, but that also has competency-based assessments of people's learning outcomes as well. Afterwards for that. So there's a huge amount of training that happens for staff in care homes.
How is that reviewed?
It's reviewed through, the review is of the actual training that's been delivered.
Yeah.
The learning outcomes have to be signed off by somebody, and then there's observational review of the training as well. So you've got to make sure that the training is put into practice and it's triangulated, and that's done through unannounced visits to care homes, to walk rounds, to talking to people, and by observation as well.
That would be the same.
Right. So we have a very similar system. We have everything that's just been said. I'll go through it again if you like. I have to challenge what you've said about us. What we're saying is platitudes. I think we're telling you sincerely what the situation is. And if you want detail, that's a different matter. So we, for example, have the same sort of e-learning system. People are tested. We record their scores. We make sure that everyone is trained up to the relevant standard. There are certain areas, such as moving and handling, where it has to be done on an observational basis. And when we think about how many, in our business, how many millions moving and handling procedures are dealt with every year, we see how very few accidents that do take place. So I think the figures speak for themselves.
And do each member of the team, each member of staff have an individual training plan?
Yes.
So that's
Training
reviewed
records,
on an annual or a 6-monthly basis?
It depends on the training. Some training's every 6 months, it needs to be refreshed, some training is annually. So there's a specification for each member of staff required to be trained in, and then that can be measured, so everybody has their own training records.
Can I give a response to that as well? I mean, I've been involved in this business one way or another in residential care for older people for 45 years. And there's one factor which throughout that period has been the defining factor about quality of care. And that's the quality of leadership in the home.
Yeah.
And that's been true, that was true in the early 70s and it's true now. I think it always will be true. And think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it? And you've heard the way we invest in those people, and we try and grow our own. We try and grow our own by preparing people to go through the system and have a career progression. But there's a shortage of these people. It is not easy. It is not easy work, and there's a lot of pressure. And there is a shortage, and we lose them, and we lose too many of them. And it is one of the reasons why the residential care system is in such difficulty. And we're putting a huge effort into making sure that we get the right people in post with the right support, you describe, measured support, and get people doing the right jobs, so they're doing the right jobs in the place and not being drawn off for continual firefighting. Because that's essential at some points, but it's not sustainable service.
Thank you.
I'd just like to endorse that, and I think we've got the right manager in Burgess Park, and I think that's making all the difference.
Okay. Before I go back to David, I had one question, which is, in both cases, how many other homes have you got that are in special measures or under embargoes? And do you think that this is a problem with Southwark, or is it just a coincidence that all our care homes in Southwark have these problems all at the same time?
Okay. We in the Four Seasons group of 350 care homes, we have 9 embargoes. One of them in Southwark. In special measures, I don't know the figure off the top of my head because I didn't prepare to answer that, but it'll probably be 3 or 4.
Okay.
Maybe slightly higher than that, because the CQC is now putting all inadequate ratings in special measures.
Yeah.
So it may be 10. I don't know.
Okay. And do you think it's a problem that's specific to Southwark, or do you think that we've just happened to have the problems that we have in all of our care homes at the same time?
In terms of it's either a coincidence, and so Burgess Park has always been a home that's been subject and susceptible to difficulties. When there is a strong home manager in there, the home works extremely well. But it's one of the it's very difficult to maintain that quality and standard, and I would hesitate to say it was Southwark, but I mean you've raised the point yourself.
And Liz, just quickly before you answer as well, one of the things that you mentioned was that the staff who are currently in Camberwell Green who want to own a company can move to Tower Bridge. One of the things you talked about was how you had to put new management in place in Camberwell Green and it didn't work. Do we really think it's the most effective thing then to move that management that didn't work at Camberwell Green to another care home?
No, sorry. I think you misunderstood what I said, because I talked about leadership as all being important. We have a manager at Tower Bridge, so we have a manager. We have I run with a lot of relief managers and turnaround managers, and my relief and turnaround managers can stay for any period of time to support a home. So the structure at the moment, I'm supporting Camberwell Green with the manager is still at Camberwell Green, but she will not be moving with the service. She'll be as the service closes. But she has a support manager working with her to help the closure, and I have another 2 turnaround managers working at Tower Bridge. So I've got really strong support in those homes. We currently have 5 embargoes. 2 of those are ones that we have chosen to not take placements just while we've got some difficulties, and the other 2 are in Southwark, and one's Camberwell Green, which is subject to closure. We have 3 homes in special measures, Tower Bridge being one of those homes.
Okay.
as well.
And then in terms of, do you think it's a problem that's sort of endemic to Southwark? Because your figures, both of you, you've got quite low figures and there's a high proportion of them within this borough. So do you think it's an issue with recruitment in the borough, or the type of services that you provide in the borough, or something, or is it actually just a coincidence that all our care homes are in this situation?
I'll just talk about the company as we are with CQC, because we very carefully monitor where we are to see, to see as a company we benchmark. And HC1 have had 74 inspections under the new regime, and we have a 62% compliance good, which is higher than any of the other larger providers, significantly higher. So our compliance, the group with HC1 with CQC shows that we have a good quality system in place there. The two homes in Southwark have had challenges that have sort of gone in and out of embargo, which is unusual for us as an operator.
Can I answer that as well? I mean, I think, just be very careful not to draw the wrong conclusions. And we have had 2 homes with difficulties in Southwark. I think those difficulties are different, as you've heard. I mean, I think they're different systems. Yes. But you say it in some of your papers, an effective care system must be a partnership. It must be a partnership between the people who use those services and care about them, and local communities and local groups, and particularly the people who commission services, primary local authorities, but also CCGs, and those of us who provide them. We have, I think, a very effective, and you've heard, a very effective closure programme with Southwark on the closure of Camberwell Green. I just wish in my time with Southwark, in talking about these issues, it had always been that closer partnership, because I think we'd have all done better.
Okay.
David? Slightly following on from your question, I've been on the councils in this currently since 2006, so I've been around for quite a long time, and I absolutely accept that there are two big problems you currently face, which is funding and shortage of nurses, of sort of quality nurses. But obviously, having been around for a bit, I know that these homes are homes that keep coming up as having problems. And Rebecca's obviously trying to pick on whether that's a particular Southwark problem or whether there's some wider issues. I mean, I totally agree with, and I saw that both John and Mike nodded very strongly. I think quality of leadership is absolutely crucial to a good home. I think if you have good leadership in a home, I think it can make a huge difference. I think that goes for lots of other things in life. But I suppose, I mean, and maybe you don't want to add anything, but I suppose what I struggle with is what reassurances really are that we're not going to be back here. Let's say these embargoes come off. What reassurances, if any, can you give us that we're not going to be back in the same place in 12 or 18 months? Because either you've got to get some really high quality managers committed to those homes and to make sure that we're not back here in 12 or 18 months. Because let's hope that something is done from the government's listening about the financial situation, because it certainly needs to be listening. But are there any reassurances that you can give us? And I suppose just picking up finally on John's point, I mean, I wasn't sure if you were trying to pass the ball there. Are you suggesting that if the council itself had been better, that somehow we wouldn't be in this situation? Is our adult social services in some ways not doing what they should be doing?
What I was saying is what I said.
And if so, what do they do? What do they do differently in other boroughs? That's what I
said. That improvement is everyone's job, and we can always improve. No one is ever perfect. You always improve. If you think you've improved to a stage where you're perfect, well, I'm afraid, today's laurels and tomorrow's compost in that sort of world. It doesn't work like that. You have to work at it all the time. And under the Care Act, which is, the key piece of legislation here, we all have responsibilities, and we must carry out those responsibilities to the best of our abilities in partnership, because we're all serving people's needs, and it can be done better. And yes, in Southwark, I think it has been particularly difficult in some instances. And because, I've worked with a lot of local authorities, I know other places where Southwark can learn from, just as those other places, I'm sure, can learn from Southwark in aspects of its best practice. But the answer to the question you're asking, how do we get a sustainable quality service, is we all work at it continually together. That's how we get a better sustainable service.
And do you have any immediate or short-term suggestions as to what we could do differently
Well,
now or not?
Well, you've got to. One is we're concentrating all our resources in one place, not two, because the commissioner has said to us, you know, when we're discussing these things, you know, there wasn't a shortage of places per se in the borough. So by concentrating our resources in one place,
As in just in Tower Bridge?
In Tower Bridge, it gives us you know, much better and measurable sort of standards on the quality quantity argument. And as I say, what I've seen, and you know, Liz is much more involved in this, and she can say, but the work on closure has been a true partnership with people working together for the benefit of the people concerned, and we can build on that as we develop better services at Tower Bridge, because they must be better. We're not satisfied with the way things have been for the reasons we've stated.
And I think you asked the question about how you can be sure, well, as an operator we don't want to provide a poor service, and we had to make that decision with Camberwell that we weren't able to provide the right service in that building, and that's why we made that decision, which wasn't a popular decision, but we couldn't continue to provide a service in that building. There was not going to be the right service for people that lived there.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Maria?
I think a lot of the questions have been already answered because my colleague David has already posed some questions and some other people have done the same. But in any case, I think that, for example, in Burgess Park, the home is a lovely home, and I think that the staff were relatively good. The biggest problem that you have in Burgess Park was that the management was so poor or non-existent that there is where you have all the problems that take you into an inadequate labelling by CQC.
Yeah.
And what? So you said a minute ago that you have already engaged a new manager.
Yes.
Are you absolutely convinced that this new manager is going to do the job adequately, and that you are not going to have the same problem again in 6 months' time?
Right. What I can say is that over the last few months, the quality of care on all our measurable levels has improved. So we feel confident that this is someone who can turn this home around and is turning the home around. Obviously, we can't keep people in the home if they wish to go elsewhere. There's a lot of pressures running at a care home, particularly one that's embargoed and one which is under a lot of pressure. And you know, we're doing what we can to support the manager, make sure that they have everything they need to run the care as well as they can. But ultimately, we're talking about staff who are free to move around. So we are very hopeful, very confident, and we think that we've got the right ingredients now to really do well in this home. But I can't give any guarantees, I'm afraid.
Okay. And I think, do you know?
No, I was going to say something about HC1, sorry. Is that when I visited the home in May 2014, my experience of the home was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. I already have mentioned this in previous meetings. It was, first of all, the security. How do they let me in and wander around without knowing who I was, without asking a question? I was experiencing terrible things with patients in there that look absolutely wet in their own urine, that they haven't been fed, that they had dehydration. So my impression of that home was absolutely appalling. And I hope that now you are going to put measurements into place so that the home is not going to go back again, time and time again.
We'd be delighted for you to come and visit any time. Come and visit Tower Bridge.
I will come and
anytime.
visit you again, for sure.
And then I'm conscious of the time that we've got other items on the agenda. So Jasmine, do you have one?
Yeah, just a very quick question, really, because I mean, I do understand, you know, the struggles that you said. Not only John, I've also been around, you know, the care industry for quite a long time in my life as well, my career. But one of the things, you talk about managers, and that must be right. You need good managers. But you're the managers of the managers, really. And I just wonder how you would, you know, the whole language of care has changed now, isn't it? Like people say compassion, you know, people want to measure compassion. So, and then we've got the My Mum test, you know, from CQC, Andrea Quickly. Just a quick question, really. How do you would you measure compassion in your homes, really? It doesn't have to be a very long answer.
I'm a nurse. I came into the business to care for people. You know what good care feels like, you know what it looks like, and you have to make sure that people look for that and do that test as well if it isn't good enough. And the mum's test isn't Andrew Suckler's test, it should be all of our tests, shouldn't it, really? If it's not good enough for any of our family members, it's not good enough for people that we care for. And we have to make sure that everybody that works with us has the same vision and values that we have as well. And that's important, and our management structure is very visible. It's in the homes. I'm not office based. I'm in the homes, talking to relatives, meeting with residents, talking to staff, talking to my managers.
And we've got a very clear programme. The very senior leaders will be in the care homes very, very regularly. We walk the floor like everyone else, and you can tell when a home is well run and there's compassion there, because the carers don't walk past somebody who needs assistance. Focused on the task in hand. They stop and they listen, and people make time to stop and talk. And you can it's quite tangible when you go into a care home.
Okay, unless anyone else has got any burning questions, thank you very much for coming on this evening. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and then I'm proposing that everybody who is there, who wants to participate in the round table, comes up and grabs a seat around the table. And if we all spread out a bit as well, so it's not so much, because we wanted to be a bit more informal, so we're not questioning you all, we just want kind of more of a discussion to happen around what we want to talk about. So thank you very much.